All right, finishing up of police use of force. All right, police officers are unique in the fact that they can utilize force to effect a detention or arrest. And most police departments will have what's known as the use of force continuum that allows an officer to utilize certain types of force to take a suspect into custody. For example, just the fact that an officer wears a uniform, has a badge, their command presence is considered as a type of visual force, meaning most people, when they see that, realize they have to obey the commands. And then some of your lower level of force would be control holds, where you hold a person by the arm, or where you try to get their arms to go behind their back to be arrested, OC spray, taser, and then of course more of your less lethal options could be something that results in bodily harm but not death, and then lethal force is where the force results in death. Police departments all over have use of force review boards, meaning not only does the supervisor review any force that is utilized by an officer and has to approve it, but there is a use of force review board that has supervisors, that has trained officers on all types of ground fighting and use of force, as well as civilians and volunteers from the community to ensure that the officer is using the right amount of force for the situation and not using excessive force. And if there is thought that excessive force was utilized, it then goes to internal affairs to be investigated, and the officer could have discipline if it's found to be justified and sustained up to termination. All right, this is kind of a look at a use of force continuum. A lot of departments are going away with them, meaning they look at every situation, which they do with anybody. But as with anything, a female officer that's only 5 foot and only weighs 100 pounds will have to use a different amount of force than an officer that's 6'5" that weighs 250 pounds. So that is also taken into account, as well as the age of the officer. So these just talk about if the suspect is compliant, this is what the officer can do: use their presence, verbal commands. If the suspect, for example, is actively resisting, then the officer can utilize canine blocking, immobilization, and aggressive and things like that. And this is where deadly force can be utilized if the suspect is trying to kill the officer or do seriously bodily injury to the officer or another citizen. Okay, so reasonable force must be utilized by officers, and a big case is Tennessee v. Garner, and that's a case you want to remember, because that case basically states that if an officer, for example, were to pull somebody over for running a red light, and that person got out of the car and looked at the officer and started running, that officer could not shoot the suspect in the back, and that was because of Tennessee v. Garner. There didn't used to be a law that required officers not to do that. So officers, for example, were chasing a burglary suspect. They were chasing Garner in Tennessee, and the burglary suspect was running away, and the officer shot Garner to stop him so that they could catch him. And this was taken up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no, unless the person is causing seriously bodily injury to somebody or the officer, then the officer can utilize deadly force in the back, but otherwise not. So I'll give you an example. The shooting at the Umpqua College. If that suspect had left the room where he had already shot students and was going to another room, an officer would be justified in shooting him in the back. But again, like on a traffic stop, if a suspect decided to run, the officer would not be justified in shooting him in the back. All right, it's a huge liability. Officers have to know that. That's why when I talked to you all earlier in this class about officers not shooting knives or weapons out of hands, it's all to do, obviously, with training and what's logical, but also liability for the police department as well. All right. If violations are criminal in nature, prosecutors and courts look at the type of force that the officer utilized, and they have to ensure that it is justified. And it's scrutinized. And sometimes it's tough being a cop because you have to make a decision within seconds, and it could be scrutinized for the rest of your life. And you could actually answer, if you make the wrong decision, you could be charged with murder criminally and taken to court and spend the rest of your life. So it's a scary situation, and most cops train very hard and take it very seriously. This is a great report. It was in November of 2005, but it's a local one that goes into officer-involved shootings, and most police departments will do this and make them public, which is great. And that finishes Chapter 9. I want to go into a couple things since we have time to make sure you can see them, and it's on the TASER. So if you head back to our chapter number 7, there are a couple videos I want to make sure you watch. One of them you can reach, and it's of the TASER. It's awesome. It really shows you how the TASER works, how it's utilized, and a really great explanation of it. So make sure that you watch this video. This is a video of a person that is resisting and is tased. So I'm going to let you watch it. This person is right here. They're not obeying the commands. And let me turn it up so you can hear. They are giving lots of commands.
Can we go on the street? Get down. Can we go on the street? Get down on your knees.
And actually at this point, they are giving him commands. There's 4 officers, and this is what the officers have to decide. At what point can they use force? So I'm going to kind of fast forward through here, and at 1 minute, they are still trying to get him, and now he's fighting, so they could have tased him. And at about right here we go. They're getting ready to tase him, and they tase him. So that's where he's tased, and this was a good use of force. They gave him many commands, and he didn't comply. And I'm going to end on a sad note. There were 7 officers killed last week. I have a link for each one. If you click on the first link, you can click on every year to find out how many officers were killed in the line of duty for that year, and you can click on each one to find out how they were killed. If you click on each officer that was killed last week, it will tell you how old they were, how long they were on duty, and they died of gunfire, and then it will time to tell you the story. So a moment of silence for the officers that were killed in the line of duty. We lost a lot last week, and I'm go ahead and end week number 7. Don't forget that you have exam number 3 to take. And if you have any questions, send me an email or ask the question under Ask Professor. And have a great week. Thank you.